Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
It happened in November of 2016, a couple weeks before Black Friday. The River Point Mall in upstate New York was already decked out in lights and garlands. Every store had a holiday display. It was supposed to be a festive season, but that year, the mall became the scene of something no one could ever explain. Daniel was 22, working the closing shift at a small electronics store on the second floor. He was used to the hum of the escalators slowing to a crawl at 9 p.m., the way the food court would go eerily quiet, the distant echoes of janitor carts rolling down empty tile hallways. But that night, something felt wrong. The mall was quieter than usual. Too quiet. He remembered a strange customer who came in around 8:45. No bags, no phone, no ID, just a man in a black hoodie who stared at the wall of phone cases for nearly 10 minutes. Daniel asked if he needed help, and the man just looked at him. No emotion. Pale face, eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. Then he walked out. No purchases, no words, just left. At 9:15, after closing and locking up, Daniel walked to the staff entrance near the loading dock. That hallway was always the creepiest part of the job, narrow, dimly lit, and painted in an old off-white color that reminded him of hospital walls. But that night, the security lights kept flickering overhead. It felt like they were struggling to stay on. And the worst part, he could hear something. Shuffling, not footsteps. Shuffling, like something dragging across the floor behind him. He turned, but no one was there. He kept walking, a little faster now, but the shuffling sound grew louder. Not rushed, rhythmic, like someone was intentionally keeping pace with him, but just out of sight. When he reached the emergency exit, he pushed the bar and it opened to the parking lot like normal. But as he stepped outside, he glanced back through the glass and saw someone standing at the end of the hallway. The same guy in the black hoodie. This time he was smiling. Daniel didn't go back to work the next day. He called out sick. The manager wasn't happy, but Daniel said he'd explain later. He didn't want to sound paranoid, but when he finally came back 3 days later, his manager asked if he'd heard the news. A 17-year-old mall employee named Mia, who worked at the candle shop across from Daniel's store, never made it home Tuesday night. Her car was still in the lot. Her phone had been found in the break room, but no security footage showed her leaving. Not through the front, not through the back. She just disappeared. Daniel couldn't stop thinking about that hallway, about the man in the hoodie. He went to mall security and asked if he could see footage from Monday night. They were hesitant, but eventually one of the older guards let him watch a portion. It was grainy, black and white, and the camera barely covered the service hallway. But Daniel watched himself walk toward the door. Then behind him, the figure appeared. Except it didn't walk. It seemed to glitch across the frame. 1 second it was 10 feet behind. The next it was directly behind him, then gone. There was a split second where its face turned toward the camera. And in that brief moment, Daniel could see that its eyes weren't just dark. They were empty, like black holes. No whites, no pupils, just voids. He asked the guard to rewind it, but the tape cut out right before the figure appeared again. That same night, the janitorial crew refused to go into the west hallway. One of them, a woman who'd worked there for 6 years, was found in the break room crying. She said she'd seen someone crawling along the ceiling in the reflection of a vending machine. But when she turned, nothing was there. The mall started hemorrhaging employees. 3 more people quit that week. Rumors spread. Some said the place was built over an old asylum. Others said a maintenance worker had died in the ventilation shafts in the 90s and was never removed. But Daniel knew it wasn't just a ghost story. Not this time. On his final shift, he decided to confront it. He brought a flashlight and a GoPro and stayed after closing, hiding in a service hallway closet. Hours passed. At 2:13 a.m., the lights cut out. His flashlight flickered violently, and then he heard the dragging again. Closer this time. Louder. He peeked out of the closet just in time to see the hooded figure round the corner. Except this time it wasn't human. The thing's face hung off its skull like wet paper. Its jaw was unhinged, swinging with every jerky step. It didn't have feet, just long gray limbs that scraped against the floor, and something dark smeared along the tiles in its wake. Daniel didn't wait. He ran, but the camera footage recovered later by mall security showed something else. From their angle, Daniel was running from nothing. The hallway was completely empty. He never returned. He moved out of state, changed jobs, never spoke of the mall again. But 2 years later, during a renovation, contractors found a sealed room behind the West Service hallway wall. Inside were old maintenance tools, a rusted ladder, and a locker with a nameplate that had been scratched out. The only thing intact inside was a rotting black hoodie draped over a chair and claw marks on the inside of the wall. To this day, Riverpoint Mall still operates, but no employees stay past closing, and the hallway near the loading dock, it's permanently sealed. But sometimes, during night patrols, guards report a soft shuffling sound, followed by the sound of someone whispering their name.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 2.
Back in 2016, a girl named Haley worked part-time at a small clothing store in a local mall in Portland, Oregon. She was a college student, quiet, dependable, and always picked up late shifts when no one else wanted them. The mall wasn't huge, just 3 levels, with a food court at the top and a mostly empty basement level that held storage units and a few defunct shops. By the time it reached 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night, the entire place felt like a hollowed-out shell of what it was during the day. It echoed. Fluorescent lights buzzed. The escalators moved slower somehow, like they were tired too. Haley's store, called Violet Thread, was nestled in a corner of the 2nd floor. It didn't get much traffic late at night, and she was mostly just folding clothes and cleaning up before closing. Around 9:15 p.m., she noticed a man standing just outside the store, not entering, just watching. He wasn't dressed strangely or anything. In fact, that was the odd part. He looked completely normal. Gray hoodie, jeans, baseball cap. But he stood perfectly still, head tilted slightly, watching her with a frozen expression. She tried not to think much of it. Malls attract weird people, especially late at night. But after 10 solid minutes of him not moving, she stepped out and asked if he needed help. The man didn't answer. He just turned and walked away down the empty hall, disappearing behind the escalators. Unnerved, she went back inside, locked up a few minutes early, and radioed security on her store's walkie-talkie system, just to let them know there was a suspicious person hanging around. They said they'd check it out. As she was gathering her things to leave through the employee back entrance, her store phone rang. It almost never rang, especially not that late. She answered. No one spoke at first. She could just barely make out breathing. Then the voice whispered, "You shouldn't have talked to me." Haley froze. Who is this? Silence again. Then the line disconnected. She grabbed her things and quickly exited into the back hallway that led to the employee staircase. Normally she'd take the elevator, but she felt too exposed tonight. As she descended the steps, she started hearing something below, metal scraping. At first, she thought it might be janitors moving something, but as she got to the bottom level, she realized there were no lights on at all. The scraping stopped. There was no one there. She turned back toward the stairs, but something caught her eye in the dark. Movement, far off in the hallway to the left. A faint rustling. Then came the sound of plastic being crinkled, like shopping bags being stepped on. She bolted up the stairs, 2 at a time, all the way back to the 2nd floor. She didn't stop until she reached the security office. She told them everything, and they brushed it off as probably just someone trying to scare her. Could have been a prank, they said. We'll do another sweep. Haley didn't go back to work for 3 days. When she did return, the mall manager called her in. Security had reviewed the footage from the night she reported the incident. They wanted to show her something. They played a clip from 9:25 p.m., just after she had gone back inside her store. The camera, positioned near the ceiling in the corridor outside, showed her cleaning up. Then, just outside the store, the man in the gray hoodie appeared again. But this time, he wasn't standing still. He was slowly pacing back and forth, stopping every so often to stare directly at the security camera. What was horrifying was that after she left her store, the man had followed her. But none of the other cameras caught him after that. He vanished somewhere between the 2nd and basement levels. Even worse, the footage revealed something Haley never knew. The man had been following her since 8 p.m. He had entered the store twice when she was in the back room, then left before she could see him. At one point, he stood just behind a rack of coats for almost 15 minutes, unmoving, his eyes fixed on the fitting rooms. Haley quit that job a week later. The mall's security staff never caught the man. They claimed he was never seen on any other nights before or after. But the strangest thing? A month later, after another employee reported hearing whispers in the stairwell, a security officer found a note tucked behind the fire extinguisher on the basement level. It said in shaky handwriting, "I like the ones who work late. They're easier to keep." To this day, no one knows who wrote it.
Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 3.
Back in December of 2013, I worked as a seasonal security guard at a mid-sized shopping mall in Pennsylvania. The mall wasn't flashy, not a big city hotspot, but during the holidays, it came alive with decorations, Santa photo booths, and the flood of desperate last-minute shoppers. My shifts were usually late evening, from around 8 p.m. to close, sometimes later when the cleaning crew needed supervision. I was mostly there to walk the floor, deter shoplifters, and make sure everything looked secure after closing. One night, about a week before Christmas, I was covering a late shift alone. A snowstorm had rolled in, and the mall was nearly empty by 9:30 p.m. Most stores were closed early, and by 10 p.m., the only people left were a couple janitors and a guy locking up the pretzel stand. I did my usual rounds and checked the entrances, all locked. Then I did the internal sweep, starting from the east wing, moving toward the food court. When I passed the old Sears wing, long since shut down and gated, I heard what sounded like footsteps. Not a normal echo or janitor's shuffle, but deliberate footsteps, slow, heavy, and pacing. I froze, thinking maybe someone had snuck in before closing. I turned on my flashlight and called out, "Mall security! You're not supposed to be here." No answer. I kept walking toward the noise, and as I got closer to the gate, the footsteps stopped. Behind the chain gate was the dark, abandoned interior of the old Sears. The store had closed 2 years earlier, and they never bothered to lease it out. Shelves were still inside, half empty. Mannequins stood like statues under dusty plastic sheets. As I scanned the space through the gate, I caught a glimpse of movement, a figure stepping behind one of the aisles. I radioed for backup, but of course, I was alone that night. Protocol said not to engage, just to monitor and call the police if I saw signs of trespassing. I backed away slowly, planning to head back to the office and check the old surveillance feeds from that wing. But before I could move far, I heard a voice. It was a child, a little girl, calling out softly, "Help me." I whipped around. The voice wasn't coming from inside Sears. It was coming from behind me, somewhere near the bathrooms across the food court. I started walking toward the sound, my flashlight flickering slightly. I called out asking if someone was there. No answer. As I stepped into the corridor where the restrooms were, I saw wet footprints, small ones like those of a child. But they weren't the normal smudges you'd expect on a mall floor. These were muddy, smeared in a way that looked almost animalistic. I followed them slowly, but they disappeared into the women's restroom. That restroom had no exit except the one I was standing at. I hesitated, then pushed the door open. The lights were off. My flashlight barely lit the stained mirrors. One stall door was swinging slightly. I called again, trying to sound calm. "Are you okay? You need help?" Then I heard it again, directly in front of me. "Help me." But this time it wasn't a child's voice. It was deeper, distorted, wrong, like someone trying to mimic a child and failing miserably. The stall door slammed shut. I ran. I didn't look back until I got to the security office. I slammed the door shut and locked it behind me, heart pounding. I pulled up the feeds from the cameras near the Sears wing and the restroom hallway. On the screen, I saw myself walking, shining the flashlight. I saw myself enter the corridor. But just before I pushed the restroom door open, something appeared behind me on the footage. It looked human, but impossibly tall, thin. Its face was long, pale, and stretched, and it had no eyes, just 2 black pits where they should have been. It stood behind me for no more than 2 seconds. Then it was gone. I didn't tell anyone what I saw. I just logged my report as a possible trespasser and left it at that. 2 days later, one of the janitors, Dan, didn't show up for his shift. They found his car still in the parking lot the next morning, but no sign of him in the mall or outside. Security footage showed him mopping near the old Sears gate around 11:40 p.m., but the footage glitched shortly after he walked out of frame. He was never found. That was my last shift. The mall closed down permanently in 2018. Most people said it was due to low traffic and high costs, but I know that wasn't the only reason. There's something inside that mall, something that pretends, something that waits. And every so often, when the lights go dim and the halls fall silent, it whispers, just loud enough to hear, "Help me."